court injunctions were meaningless to them, but they felt that the federal courts were courts that they preferred not to have to infringe upon in terms of breaking injunctions or violating their orders. And he pretty well made it clear that they didn't care what the order was. Unless they approved of the order, they were going to violate the injunction. That was definite. Uh, Birch and I talked quite a bit during that period over the phone 2 or 3 times. And the next day we had the full hearing. That was when I cross-examined Young, and the hearing was to a large extent, I'd say, window dressing to get it across, because it was rather evident that if Brown did anything, he was going to try to say that the marchers shall be 4 in line or 8 abreast, or there'll be so many marshals, and it was, everybody felt better about this. We felt that this was going to be a good thing. We did not appreciate, or we weren't happy over the fact that Young and Lawson and others said they weren't going to abide the injunction. We felt if they too wanted to join in this protective approach to it through the federal courts, it would be better. But regardless, it was a good thing, we felt, and a salutary thing that this injunction, or the supervisory injunctive order, was being entered.
Yeah, just to
that
clarify,
was the night King was killed.
Yes, sir. To clarify, when Lawson, Young, and Dr. King himself said they weren't going to obey the injunction, they didn't mean, or did you think that they didn't, would they have meant that if there were guidelines, they wouldn't obey the guidelines?
What they meant, what they made clear to us was, unless it was an injunction which is, terms of which were satisfactory to them.
They were willing to accept certain
That's right.
guidelines.
For example, if they didn't like the guidelines, they didn't
Yeah.
intend to follow that part of the injunction. If the injunction was one that they approved of, they would not violate it. But they wanted us to know that they were used to, they said, we're used to going to jail. We have violated a lot of injunctions all over the country. And they pointed to Selma and other places, and wanted us to know that we could go to court as much as we wanted, and that didn't concern them. That they did have a little sort of concern about the fact that it was a federal court. I assume that grows out of the fact that the federal courts formally were enjoining white citizens council groups, and they must have. So anyway, that was their approach to it. And as I say, that night I was driving home, and that's the night I heard King was shot.
Yeah, you were on your way home. You heard
About
it on the
7
radio.
o'clock, roughly.
Can you recall what you did then? Or?
I had gone to get my car. I was good and tired, and had gone to get my car, and was driving out near Marshall and Union or Madison. I noticed the lights all were turning red, and I heard sirens. And I made a couple of wiggling turns to avoid lights so I could get away from the area where the traffic was being stopped. And there wasn't any traffic on the street to Mountain. And I heard on the radio the shooting of Dr. King. And I thought, this is fantastic. You know, after we had been down there saying that we don't want this to happen. And of course, then when I got home later, I learned that he was dead on television. From television.
Yeah. Did you listen to television that night?
Yes, I listened to it. There were people over for dinner that night, and we all listened on it very somberly, you know.
Did you call the mayor or anything?
Mayor, I was going to be down to the mayor's office, but there wasn't any way to get down there. There were so I wasn't at the mayor's office that night. I was down there the next morning. He stayed there all that night. Next morning I came down, there was a group of Negro women in there, say 8, 10, or 12, giving him a real lashing, you know.
Were these the women because no one was at the airport, or?
These were, seemed to me, a highly intelligent, nice-looking bunch of Negro women who said they were down there because they felt sorry for Loeb, because he simply didn't understand the Negro point of view, that he was so out of it. They wanted to discuss it with him. And they went into things like the Inslee Plantation, which is the name of the land down there. You know, that's the land where they've got the big power plant. They call that land Inslee Plantation. Well, the term plantation offended them. Loeb had several years ago, when he was mayor, felt that a lot of the low-cost housing should be moved out to outlying property. And he said property such as the penal farm area. Well, of course, the unfortunate coincidence there, they immediately converted that, they'd put all the Negroes in the penal farm. And they brought up those kind of things that morning. Rabbi Wax and his group had already been in there.
Oh, yes.
And of course, these things are available on TV and
Yes,
so
sir.
forth. And
Yes.
Loeb was pretty cool. I sat there and watched him. I said, this guy really is going to blow any time because no human being can put up
Yes.
with it.
Yes.
Ramsey Clark came into town with an associate who was a Negro. He never communicated with Loeb at all.
Oh,
He did communicate, I understand, with Holloman, but he didn't communicate with Loeb. Whether Loeb ever went over to see him at a later time, I honestly don't know. But from that point on, I was constantly in touch with him, and I tried to communicate with some of the. Of course, there was no settling it then. Everything became the price we're going to pay for Martin Luther King's life, and at that point is when the things like wages, grievance procedure, all came in as big issues.